0347 hours. The blackness of the Strait of Hormuz was broken by the simultaneous shutting down of the engines of 16 Iranian Ghadar-class midgets that were now in silent running mode. 89 nautical miles to the southeast, the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group was on steady 12-knot transit through the international waters and apparently oblivious of the fact that the castle of underwater ambush that Iran had planned, the most sophisticated in 20 years, was underway. What the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had been unaware of was that their invisible fleet had been visible on the eyes of the American sensors even before they had left their hardened submarine pens. And just 73 minutes later, the naval commanders of Tehran were going to have suffered the biggest technological defeat of any in the history of modern asymmetric warfare. This was not an accidental meeting. This was the carefully laid out Operation Martyr's Tide of Iran, a carefully organized assault aimed at demonstrating that the American carrier superiority could be defeated by a swarm of small and inexpensive submersible vessels assaulting costly defense systems. This grouping of miniature submarines, which the IRGC had invested more than $890 million in, consisted of 29-meter-long steel tubes, each of which had two 533mm torpedoes and a crew that had the cynicism to be willing to be martyrs in case of need. The Iranian strategy in the area had now become the Frankenstein approach. Create a navy which does not have to be the same as the American one. These midget submarines were intended to patrol in the coast waters which the escorts of the Ford were unable to work in effectively, attack with suicidal accuracy, and then flee when no organized retaliation might be organized. To Tehran, the mathematics seemed favorable. There were 16 subs, 32 torpedoes, versus a carrier strike force of about $45 billion. Any 10% success would become a strategic disaster to Washington and a propaganda triumph that would reverberate throughout the Islamic world over generations. Mathematics, however, are not useful when both parties are calculating on the same variables. Iran was solving a 1980s problem. The US Navy had already advanced to a new level of war altogether. 0351 hours. The initial sign of the fact that something disastrous was evolving was not the submarines themselves, but the electromagnetic whispers that they left after them. 132 sea miles east of the Ford, the USS John Finn, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, had been following an unknown passive sonar contact over 2 hours. The contact was not wailing like a whale, and was not giving rise to the acoustic signature of a commercial vessel, but continued to crop and vanish in patterns strongly suggesting the use of noise discipline. The sonar crew on the Finn named it Sierra 77 and initiated the development of a tracking solution with the AN/SQQ-89A V-15 anti-submarine warfare system, a digital predator capable of tracking more than 300 subsurface contacts at once and eliminating biological noise, thermal layers and acoustic deception. Sierra 77 was interesting since it was not alone. The towed array sonar of the Finn in a quarter of an hour revealed 4 other contacts, working in a loose formation, all at the same depth, all with the same stop and drift characteristics. It was not just any submarine activity. This was orchestrated tactical maneuvering, and it bore the recognizable mark of IRGC Ghadar-type boats flak attacking in a by-the-book pincer move. The Battle Intelligence Center of the Finns did not panic. They did not air warnings. They just sent an encrypted burst to the Tactical Flag Command Center of the Ford via the Cooperative Engagement Capability Network, a system where all ships, aircraft and submarines in a strike group can view the same tactical picture in real time and forms a hive mind conscious, providing the speed of light. 0358 hours. The Ghadar submarines thought that they were carrying out some cunning strategy when the Ford strike group had already moved into a ballet show of anti-submarine fighting in choreographed movement. 2 Mega Henrys -60R Seahawk helicopters were brought out of the deck on the Ford, and their magnetic anomaly sensors and dipping sonar instruments gave a 3-dimensional view of the water column. At the same time, a P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft that had been loitering 200 miles south was heading towards the engagement area, its stomach full of sonobuoys, torpedoes, and synthetic aperture radar that could pick up submarine periscopes at 30,000 feet. The Iranian submarines believed that they were predating. They were, in fact, involved in the largest underwater surveillance exercise the US Navy had ever engaged in the Persian Gulf within 6 years. It was not the firepower that was brilliant about the American response, but it was patience. All the weapons systems that could kill such submarines were operational and in place. The destroyers might have dropped Mark 54 torpedoes which would have reduced Ghadars into metal coffins in a few minutes. The Seahawks would have been able to attack immediate attacks using precision-guided depth charges. Rather, the strike group commander had calculated, leave it to them. Allow them to divulge the extent of their operation. Allow them to suspect that they have the upper hand. The intelligence is greater than the wreckage because in a present-day naval warfare. 0412 hours. The Iranian scheme started to show all its structure. The 16 Ghadar submarines did not work alone. They were being directed onshore. An invisible command center within the limestone cliffs of the island of Keshem. Iranian controllers were transmitting encrypted burst commands to the submarine fleet using the low-frequency underwater acoustic transmissions disguised as calls made by marine mammals, which would then be put into the crescent formation that would then enclose the Ford strike group in the shallow Macron coastal shelf. It was operationally complex and tactically sophisticated and fully noticeable to American signals intelligence. An EP-3E Ares II electronic reconnaissance plane had been flying high above the Gulf in lazy circles with its sensors actively collecting all of the electromagnetic emissions in the Iranian airspace. When those low-frequency acoustic signals started being relayed, not only did the crew of the EP-3E intercept them, but the transmission points were geolocated with meter-level precision. The encryption protocols were known and the data was now fed to the cryptographic warfare system of the Ford. The American technicians had hacked the Iranian command code in 18 minutes, not with brute force computation, but with a weakness in the codes that the Iranian engineers had stolen out of obsolete Russian naval software. The hunters had just given the Americans the full playbook, right before their eyes. 0429 hours. The group of Ford strike moved, and it was not kinetic but a psychological move. Rather than trying to destroy the submarines, the destroyers started to send spoofed acoustic signals which would simulate a carrier task force going out of formation in panic. False propeller banging. Simulated high-speed action. Even made up radio traffic pertaining to the Ford having to undertake emergency evasive action. It echoed complete tactical success to the sonar operators in those crowded submarine hulls to the Iranian sonar operators. The Americans were in a state of terror. The ambush was working. It would be any second before launch authorization. What the Iranians were unaware of was that those acoustic ghosts were in fact being produced by the AN/SLQ-25 Nixie anti-torpedo countermeasures systems decoy flare that are ordinarily used to mislead incoming torpedoes, but was in this case being used against the Iranian operators. The actual Ford had not turned by even 1 degree. It was still sailing calmly across the international waters, and its air wing was putting aircrafts into the air and taking them out as usual without any fear of the submarines who thought they had them surrounded. 0441 hours. The shore command of Tehran was making their fatal mistake. Thinking the American formation was disintegrating, they sent the signal of attack authorization. A compressed digital blast of less than 2 seconds. It was conferred at the same time on all Ghadar submarines. Arms emancipated. Strike at will. Allah Akbar. 16 submarine captains were filling up their torpedo tubes, terminating final targeting solutions, preparing to become a part of the Iranian naval legend with their names. That 2-second transmission had immediately given a high-definition target to each command bunker, each relay station, each communications backup node in the coastal defense system of Iran. The reply of the Ford was the art of networking accuracy. At the same time that attack order was sent, 2 things occurred at the same time. Firstly, the P-8A Poseidon launched a salvo of Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes that were specifically built to pursue shallow water subcontacts. These were not stupid bombs. A single torpedo had an active, passive sonar seeker that used artificial intelligence to discriminate against the target. Their ability to distinguish between a Ghadar submarine and the hull of a merchant ship was 99.7%. Second, and much worse, 4F A-18E Super Hornets with AGM-154 CJSOW glide bombs dropped their arms at 40,000 feet, beyond the Iranian surface-to-air missile capability. It was not the submarines the JSOWs were attacking, they already had a hand in those underwater. The glide bombs had an aim of hitting the shore command infrastructure, manipulated by GPS, with terminal infrared cameras. Every 500-kilogram warhead could penetrate 3 meters of reinforced concrete, and then explode. The data on targeting had been directly obtained off those acoustic transmissions that were intercepted. Iranian commanders who believed that their submarines were about to glory had been making their own graves by giving them the GPS coordinates. 0444 hours. The submerged section of the Tide of Operation Martyrs failed in a chain reaction which could have been shown on TV comedy had it not been so fatal. The Mark 54 torpedoes did not even have to make direct hits. Their closeness went off with deadly range of 9 Ghadar submarines, and the pressure waves had fallen away parts of their hulls as aluminum cans. There were 3 other submarines that, having known they were being hunted by acoustic homing arms, tried emergency surface maneuvers, a panicky measure that made them targets of instant visual identification by the Seahawk helicopters, which transmitted coordinates to the destroyers. Surface-to-surface Harpoon missiles destroyed those boats in a matter of minutes. 4 Ghadar submarines were lucky to avoid immediate destruction as they went dead quiet and landed on the sea bottom, hoping to wait the attack. Time, sensors and patience the Ford strike group had. MH-60R helicopters created sonobuoy barrier pattern around the possible hiding points and formed an acoustic fence that will notice the slightest propeller movement or stress of the hull. The submarine crews were given the option of remaining quiet and suffocating because of the dwindling supply of oxygen, or they could have opted to escape and be killed. 3 finally attempted to make a run. The only one survived to the Iranian territorial waters, and its crew was traumatized, and its hull was ruined to the point of being inoperable. 0456 hours. The Keshem Island was struck by surgical fire by the JSOW strike packages. In 4 seconds, the main command bunker, buried 12 meters, allegedly impervious to American bunker busters, was struck 3 times. The warheads, which were penetrating, broke through the limestone overburden and hit the operations center, killing 23 officers of the IRGC and destroying the entire shore-based command network of the miniature submarine fleet of Iran. In the next 8 minutes, backup relay stations that were distributed throughout the coastline were systematically destroyed one by one, based on their electromagnetic signature, and neutralized before Iranian air defenses could even obtain a radar lock. The cost-benefit analysis was that of the asymmetric warfare backfiring disastrously on the asymmetric power. Iran had invested $890 million in submarine fleet, lost 15 boats out of sight, with 1 more being in a non-mendable condition, killed or taken prisoner 127 submariners, and seen their shore command infrastructure, estimated to cost about $240 million, turned into smoke. Iranian total losses: 1. $13 billion, and their most advanced naval power was destroyed. The U.S. spent 9 Mark 54 torpedoes of $400,000 apiece, $6 million, 8 JSOW glide bombs of $250,000 apiece, $2 million, 3 Harpoon missiles of $2 million apiece, $6 million, and about 800,000 pounds of aviation fuel, sonobuoys, and operating expenses. American total spending: $2 million. There were no casualties. No equipment was damaged, and the Ford did not take off the patrol track even 1 degree. 0521 hours. The activity was completed even before the Iranian state television got the slightest clue that it had started. Air wing activities of the Ford went on as usual. The destroyer screen took a normal defensive station. Fighting air patrols were stuck on board with extra fuel. The fact that anything had happened was only evidenced by the debris field floating on Iranian coastal waters, which consisted of oil slicks, hull fragments, and the here and there raft of survival shocked submariners who would spend the rest of their lives explaining how the invisible fleet had become visible corpses in less than 90 minutes. The propaganda machine of Tehran aired the images of American unprovoked aggression against defensive patrols in the course of 6 hours. The international maritime tracking, satellite imagery, and signals intelligence of 14 countries with which the country was allied told another story. The Ford did not even venture into Iranian waters. The offensive positioning was initiated by the Iranian submarines. Iranian command sent the attack authorization. The American reaction was calculated, proportional, and crippling in its efficiency. Instantly, the lesson was drawn to the World Naval Society. Small submarine swarm strategy, which was initially viewed as a possible asymmetric ace card against carrier strike groups, was now revealed as outdated before even entering the mainstream. The technology difference was not quantified in terms of dollars. It was quantified in terms of dimensions. Iran was also waging a 3-dimensional war against submarines, surface vessels, and aircraft. The American military was engaged in a 5-dimensional war that involved electromagnetic warfare, cyber warfare, and network-centric kill webs at machine speed. The material losses were not the most harmful thing to Iran. The bleeding was the intelligence hemorrhage. All the submarines which tried to escape left acoustic signatures which are classified by the American databases. All the encrypted messages were decrypted and stored. All the tactical doctrines were monitored, examined, and negated. The submarine warfare capability of the IRGC was not only eradicated, but it was dissected, comprehended, and rendered open and dead forever. The way the Iranian submarines would operate in future would be done with the knowledge that the American sensors would monitor their activities as soon as they took off.